Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchy Awakening. I just cleaned a kitchen counter. Sorry, not kitchen sink. Sorry, bathroom counter and sink. Oh, my brain can't get them right. And so I'm on a break right now. And I thought, hey, let's continue where we left off. This is going to be part four on where a uh, Gynarchy or gynocentric community or society can come from. And it can come from, in my opinion, through the international online Gynarchy community and the existing gynocentric societies. Now, why might that be? Well, I think the first thing that has to happen when you start having ideas and thoughts about women, not just running your relationship, but running a society, is first you have to know that you're not crazy. Because there's been a lot of propaganda, a lot of androcentric conditioning that takes place by the way of religious upbringing, civic upbringing, you name it. I mean, most of the people, the historical figures that individuals look up to, the ones that they put on the highest pedestal, are usually men. One way you can test this is if you don't know anything, like go up to a kid. Right? You can't do this with a gynecologist because it won't work, or it might not work. But go up to somebody who just got out of high school and ask them how many women scientists they know of currently, and how many women scientists there were throughout history who made discoveries. Now do the same thing with men. And what you find is more often than not, the young people within the institution who come out of these educational places, they will mention men because their thinking is androcentric. It's focused on venerating and I don't want to say worship, but I do want to say there's definitely some favoritism towards them. Like for instance, Rosa Parks is given credit and respect for starting for kicking something off in the civil rights movement, and yet the individuals who are considered the leaders are two men. They're the ones that get the lion's share of the attention. They're the ones that are represented the most in U.S. history textbooks. And I say that, some people won't even cover Malcolm X. They'll talk about Dr. King. So that's something to chew on here. So the first thing when you're from this kind of society that is male led or male dominated, it can be worse. You could be somebody from the Arabic world who is gynocentric, and all you see is that thing going on. And you first need to know, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I mentally ill? Is there something wrong with me? And when you go online and you find these other gynarchists, other people who are perfectly fine with women running their relationships, ruling over their workplace. In other words, they're fine with having a woman as a boss. They're fine with the woman uh, having control over their finances. Some of these individuals will actually deposit their check in their wife or girlfriend's bank account because there's that level of trust in the authority of that woman. And so when you do find these individuals, there is a feeling, there's a sense of validation, like I knew it wasn't just me. And I think that if we don't have that international online community, I think it can be much harder for people to sort of escape from the androcentric conditioning because part of the purpose of the conditioning is to make you think that there couldn't be any other way, that this is the only way it could possibly be or will ever be. And one of the ways you can break from that thinking is by exposing yourself to the other individuals who are in these gynocentric relationships and who are currently brainstorming or making observations about these ideas. You can find them on Reddit. You can find them in Twitter. You can find them on Discord. There are any number of, and you can find them on FetLife too. There are a bunch of different websites and apps where you can locate these individuals and have conversations with them, or just read the conversations they're already having publicly with each other. And It does require a lot of work. I won't lie. I had to build my Twitter channel up, or X, or whatever you want to call it. I had to build that up in order to get to where I am today. And I'm still building that. I think I have about 700 followers or something. Obviously, I have more people following me on X than I do on here, but that's nor one way or the other. I just couldn't use their spaces. It's easier to make a video and link it from YouTube than it is to use that space for me. I just couldn't figure it out. And so there's that. There's also the fact that it is critical to have an international community because it's more difficult to silence an international community than it is to silence an individual community. Uh, so, for instance, if I have ideas, right, and let's say I'm totally closed off from the rest of the world, in this hypothetical scenario, if somebody wants to squash the Gynarchy community in that area, they could. They could very easily do it. This is why Gynarchy, Gynocentric society or community, these conversations have to be taking place internationally, and information has to be shared internationally between people of different ethnic backgrounds, people of different cultural backgrounds, people who are come from different countries. It can't simply come from one source, because if it does, it would be a matter of, it'd be an easy matter enough to squash it out. About to sneeze. Sorry. It'd be an easy enough. It'd be easy enough to just squash it out, but that doesn't happen, and that can't happen because let's say you have a dictatorship in one place, a male dictatorship, and they unfortunately kill all those people and do all that stuff. Well, if they exchange those ideas with other Gynarchists and other people, then the movement is just evolving through other human beings. And there's no one government that's ever taken over the world. And that's likely to not happen in our lifetimes or what have you. So, but why does this matter, right? Because if we can build, first of all, if we're building dialogue and conversation, and then from that, we start to engage in action plans or ways for us to cooperate with each other or communicate with each other when it comes to art that influences the public or towards some other goal, then we are no longer passive observers. We are actively contributing to and becoming part of a ever-growing community. And sooner or later, that online community will translate in some way, will translate into the offline communities. Oh. And so that's why I feel like this is a place where it could come from, because these people are already having these conversations about what is it supposed to look like? You know, what are the responsibilities of men or women? So people, they're already there. They're already having the conversations. It's just that a lot of them don't have action plans yet. So as long as it's international, and as long as that information is being shared, it's impossible to completely squash that information and squash a movement, because it's taking place from so many different places. With some governments are more accepting of these ideologies, are more open to people practicing their free speech and so on. And then you have other countries that are not so big on that. But I've often found that because we're such a super minority, most people don't really take us seriously or pay too much attention to us. And so because they don't do that, that actually gives us even more room. Not more room, but more time to figure this out amongst ourselves. There's also the existing gynocentric societies. I've already mentioned one from Africa where women where women left their communities because of rape or sexual assault for men, or physical battery or what have you, just any kind of serious abuse levied against them by the men in their lives. But for fuck's sake, I need a holder. I need a holder in the worst way when I get the money. So there are other gynocentric societies and how do they act as a source? Like, how can another Gynarchy or gynocentric society community, how can that be existing based on something that we've never really been exposed to? And the reason for that is it's as simple as inspiration. Like when you find out, because you've spent your whole life believing that every government or most governments are male led, you're given that impression that most governments are male led, that this is just the state of the world, the affairs, it revolves around these male led countries. And then you find out about places like Masuo, where women pretty much they run the show in many avenues of their life. They live in separate housing from the men. So in other words, there's different housing arrangements. In other words, different domestic arrangements. So the way they organize their communities is different, and that organization benefits the health of the women and girls. Um, Also, they have a different way of raising their sons than we do in the West. And so if you pay attention to this stuff and you realize, okay, it is possible. It's not just theoretical. It's not like this is another point, it's another form of validation for a gynarchist, because it's one thing to meet people who have thoughts about this stuff. It's another thing to actually observe a society of people putting those thoughts into practice and seeing how those work to the benefit of the women and the girls. That is something that will catch the attention of anybody who's thinking about questions like, how do we create these communities? How do we form them? How do we interact with each other? What laws do we agree to? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, we can look to these as a template in a sense and say, hey, this separate housing thing. And I was kind of influenced by this too when I was writing my in-person Gynarchy community template. I was looking at going, that's interesting. They have separate housing. I didn't entirely I don't know, I don't remember how far I took the idea, but I thought that that was a great idea because it provided a degree of safety for the women and the girls, because men will often abuse the privacy that they have in the West to abuse women and girls. And it can be very difficult to convince other people, especially if you don't have any evidence, because predators try to make sure that their victims can't provide any of their wrongdoing. And in this society, it's more like, yeah, actually, when we're done having sex or whatever, go back to your home. This is my home. You go to your home. You live in separate quarters from me. And I also think that kind of that's a very big cultural difference between West and West, what we have here, and in Masuo, which is here, it's like, well, you get married and then you live with the other person for 10, 20, blah, blah, blah years, how many ever years it is. And over there, it's like, yeah, this is my home, this is my domain. I don't want you in here. You can go over there. And I think that separation between the two sexes, I actually think that helps everybody's health, not just women's health. That helps everybody when you have some meaningful separation, because it allows women to have their own privacy without men violating it, at least not in the home. It provides a sense of safety. And I think that right there immediately makes it a better situation for women than what we have in the West here, where women continue to trust men, buy into knight in shining armor propaganda. And then when the men successfully deceive these women into marrying them, into partnering up with them, that's when, behind closed doors, you start seeing and hearing about some of the more reprehensible behaviors like domestic abuse, battery, sexual assault, as well as other kinds of, psychological and mental verbal abuse. And so I think that, by seeing that a society has already put it into practice, it acts as encouragement, and it could be used as like the basis by which other gynarchists form their own community or own society. Or at the very least, it can be seen as an example of where we could go if we wanted to. Anyways, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I've got to get back to chores. I hope you all have a great day. Take care.